Jasmine Williams stepped through the wide double doors of Westlake High School, her heart pounding against her ribs like a drum. The hallway stretched before her, crowded with unfamiliar faces that turned to stare as she passed. This was her third school in 2 years, not by choice but because her mom's job kept them moving. Being the new kid was hard enough, but being one of the few black students in this overwhelmingly white school made her stand out even more. "Just breathe," she whispered to herself, clutching her schedule tighter. The paper crinkled in her sweaty palm as she searched for room 203. The first few classes went by in a blur. Teachers introduced her with awkward smiles, and students offered polite nods before returning to their conversations. Jasmine was used to this. The polite distance, the curious glances. By lunchtime, her shoulders had relaxed a little. Maybe this school wouldn't be so bad after all. That thought vanished the moment she entered the cafeteria. The noise hit her first. Hundreds of teenagers talking, laughing, chairs scraping against the floor. Jasmine scanned the room for an empty seat, her lunch tray growing heavier by the second. She spotted a half-empty table near the window and headed toward it, relief washing over her. Excuse me?" A girl with sleek blonde hair and expensive-looking clothes blocked her path. 2 others flanked her sides like bodyguards. "That table's taken." Jasmine glanced at the table again. Only 3 students sat at a table meant for 12. "There's plenty of room," she said quietly. The blonde girl, Alexis was her name, Jasmine remembered from English class, looked her up and down, eyes lingering on Jasmine's braids. "I said it's taken." The 2 girls behind Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa, snickered. Jasmine felt heat rise to her cheeks as nearby conversations quieted. People were watching now. "Whatever," Jasmine muttered, turning away. She found a spot at the far corner of the cafeteria, sitting alone while trying to ignore the burning sensation of eyes on her back. That afternoon in AP Chemistry, Jasmine answered a question that had stumped the rest of the class. The teacher beamed at her. "Excellent analysis, Jasmine. It seems Westridge Academy prepared you well." A whisper floated from the back of the room, just loud enough for Jasmine to hear. "Teacher's pet. Bet she only got into AP because they needed to fill their diversity quota." Laughter followed. Jasmine recognized the voices, Alexis and her friends again. The pattern continued for weeks. Jasmine excelled in her classes, joined the debate team, and even caught the attention of college scouts visiting the school. But with each achievement came escalating hostility from Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa. They accidentally knocked books from her hands in the hallway. They mimicked her voice when she spoke in class. They created a fake social media account using her photo, filling it with stereotypes and harmful jokes. One evening, Jasmine sat on her bed, scrolling through the hateful comments on her phone. Tears blurred her vision as she read message after message. Her mother knocked gently before entering the room. "Baby, what's wrong?" she asked, sitting beside Jasmine. "Nothing," Jasmine said automatically, wiping her eyes. "Just school stuff." Her mother took the phone, eyes narrowing as she read the screen. "This isn't just school stuff. This is harassment." "It doesn't matter," Jasmine said, her voice small. "If I say anything, it'll just get worse." Her mother placed firm hands on Jasmine's shoulders. "Listen to me. Your grandma didn't march in Selma for you to sit here and take this. Your great-grandfather didn't fight for this country just for his great-granddaughter to be treated like this." Something stirred in Jasmine's chest, not just anger but determination. "You're right," she whispered. "But I need to handle this my way." That night, as Jasmine stared at her ceiling, a plan began to form in her mind. She wouldn't stoop to their level. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. No, she would rise so high that they couldn't touch her. Little did Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa know that their cruel words had just lit a fire that would eventually burn down their entire world. The next few weeks at Westlake High became a living nightmare for Jasmine. What started as whispers and dirty looks from Alexis and her friends quickly grew into something much worse. Jasmine could handle being ignored. She'd been the new girl before, but this felt different, more targeted. One morning, Jasmine opened her locker to find her textbooks soaked with water. Another day, someone had scribbled crude words across her gym clothes. Each time she'd take a deep breath, clean up the mess, and keep going. Just ignore them, her mom would say during their evening calls. Focus on your studies. That became harder when Jasmine's English teacher announced the school would be sending one student to represent Westlake at the regional academic decathlon. The competition offered a scholarship prize that could help with college tuition, something Jasmine's single mother couldn't easily afford. I'll be reviewing applications this week, Ms. Thompson explained, smiling directly at Jasmine. I encourage our top students to apply. That afternoon, Jasmine stayed late to complete her application. The empty hallways felt peaceful as she carefully listed her academic achievements and previous awards. Hope bloomed in her chest as she slipped the finished application under Ms. Thompson's door. 3 days later, the principal announced over the loudspeaker, "Congratulations to Jasmine Williams, who will represent Westlake High at this year's Regional Academic Decathlon." Pride washed over her as classmates turned to look, some with genuine smiles, others with surprise. Her moment of joy lasted exactly 7 minutes. In the hallway between classes, Alexis bumped into her deliberately, sending Jasmine's books scattering across the floor. "Oops. Sorry," Alexis said, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Guess they needed to fill their diversity quota this year." Zoe laughed loudly. "Yeah, must be nice getting special treatment." Vanessa joined in. "Did your mom threaten to call the NAACP or something?" Their words stung worse than any physical blow. Jasmine knelt to gather her books, blinking back tears. A few students walking by pretended not to notice, while others looked uncomfortable, but kept moving. That night, strange notifications flooded Jasmine's phone. Someone had created a fake profile using her photo, filling it with horrible stereotypes and racist jokes. Comments poured in from anonymous accounts, some from students she recognized at school. "Look at what the quota kid posted now. This is why she shouldn't represent our school. Go back to your old school where you belong." Jasmine's hands shook as she tried reporting the account, but new ones popped up faster than she could block them. Sleep became impossible as her phone buzzed throughout the night. The next morning, Jasmine gathered her courage and went to the guidance counselor's office. Mr. Richards listened as she explained the situation, showing him screenshots of the worst messages. "Kids can be cruel," he sighed, leaning back in his chair. "But this is just normal teenage drama. Everyone goes through it." "Normal?" Jasmine's voice cracked. "There's nothing normal about this." Mr. Richards adjusted his glasses. "Have you tried just fitting in more? Sometimes when we stand out too much, we become targets." Jasmine stared at him in disbelief. "You're saying this is my fault?" No, he backpedaled. "I'm saying sometimes it's easier to blend in until you find your place. The bullying usually stops once you're not so noticeable." Jasmine left the office feeling worse than before. The message was clear. The problem wasn't the bully's behavior, it was her existence. That afternoon during lunch, Jasmine sat alone as usual, pushing food around her tray without eating. Across the cafeteria, Alexis and her friends were showing something on their phones, laughing loudly. Several students kept glancing her way. A quiet voice beside her broke through her thoughts. "Is this seat taken?" Jasmine looked up to see Mr. Washington, the history teacher. Without waiting for an answer, he sat down. "I heard about what happened," he said quietly, "and I want you to know that Mr. Richards was wrong." Jasmine stared at her tray. "It doesn't matter. It absolutely matters," Mr. Washington said firmly. "And what those girls are doing isn't just mean, it's harassment." For the first time in weeks, someone was acknowledging what she was going through. Tears threatened to spill over. "You have 2 choices," Mr. Washington continued. "You can let them win, or you can fight back. Not with their methods, but with something much more powerful." Jasmine looked up. "What's that?" A small smile crossed Mr. Washington's face. "Strategy, intelligence, and the most powerful weapon of all, documentation." As the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch, Mr. Washington slid a small notebook across the table. Write down everything, dates, times, exactly what was said, who witnessed it. Meanwhile, keep preparing for that academic competition. Something shifted inside Jasmine as she took the notebook. The tears retreated, replaced by a calm determination. They think they're teaching me a lesson, she said quietly, but they have no idea what's coming. The annual Spring Talent Show was Westlake High's biggest event of the year. Students showcased everything from comedy routines to dance performances, and participation meant serious social points. Jasmine hadn't planned on signing up, but Mr. Washington convinced her it might help change her image at school. Sometimes the best way to fight stereotypes is to show people who you really are, he'd told her. So Jasmine found herself backstage on Friday night, peeking through the curtains at the packed auditorium. Parents, teachers, and students filled every seat. Even the principal sat front and center with several school board members, important people from the district who rarely visited individual schools. Jasmine's palms sweated as she reviewed her spoken word piece one last time. She'd written about her grandmother's experiences growing up in the South and how those stories shaped her own identity. It was personal, more personal than anything she'd shared at Westlake so far. Next up, the student announcer called, "Please welcome Jasmine Williams performing an original spoken word piece titled, 'My Grandmother's Hands.'" The spotlight felt blinding as Jasmine walked center stage. She scanned the audience, heart pounding, and spotted Mr. Washington giving her an encouraging nod. She took a deep breath and began. Her voice started soft, almost a whisper, describing her grandmother's hands. Calloused from picking cotton as a child, gentle when braiding Jasmine's hair, strong when standing up to anyone who tried to make her feel small. As the piece built, so did Jasmine's confidence. The audience leaned forward, drawn into her story. Then she noticed movement in the third row. Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa had their heads together, giggling as they looked at something on Vanessa's phone. Jasmine faltered for just a moment, then pushed forward with even more emotion. Just as she reached the powerful conclusion of her piece, the large projection screen behind her suddenly lit up. Instead of the simple background she'd planned, crude memes flashed across the screen. Horrible, stereotypical images with Jasmine's face poorly photoshopped onto them. Gasps rippled through the audience. Jasmine froze mid-sentence, the words dying in her throat as she turned and saw what everyone was staring at. Laughter erupted from several corners of the auditorium, not from the adults who looked horrified, but from clusters of students. From the third row, Alexis and her friends were practically doubled over with laughter. Alexis held up her phone, clearly recording Jasmine's reaction for later mockery. The tech crew scrambled to shut down the projection, but the damage was done. Jasmine stood alone on stage, the spotlight still blazing down on her as tears burned behind her eyes. The silence felt endless as everyone waited to see what she would do. Run, hide, cry. That's what they expected. Instead, Jasmine turned back to face the audience. Her hands trembled, but her voice came out steady when she spoke into the microphone. "This," she said, gesturing to the now blank screen, "is exactly why the words of my grandmother matter. She taught me that people who try to humiliate others are telling you more about themselves than about you." A few scattered claps started from the back, growing stronger as more adults joined in. Jasmine stepped away from the microphone as principal. Chen rushed onto the stage. "Who is responsible for this?" he demanded, his face flushed with anger. But Jasmine already knew no one would confess, and few would snitch. She gathered her notes and walked off stage with her head high, even as tears finally spilled down her cheeks. In the wings, she collapsed onto a folding chair, her whole body shaking. Mr. Washington found her there minutes later. "I'm so sorry, Jasmine. What they did was cruel and completely unacceptable." "It doesn't matter," she whispered, wiping away tears. "Nothing's going to change. The principal will give some speech about respect, maybe call in the girls for a talk, but in the end they'll get away with it like they always do." "Not necessarily," a new voice said. They both looked up to see a woman in a tailored suit standing in the doorway. "I'm Dr. Powell, superintendent of the district. I was here with the school board tonight." She knelt beside Jasmine's chair. What happened to you tonight wasn't just mean-spirited. It was racial harassment, and we have very specific policies against that. Hope flickered briefly in Jasmine's chest before reality extinguished it. But you'd need proof it was them, and no one's going to admit who did it? Dr. Powell smiled grimly. In cases like this, it's rarely the first incident. Mr. Washington tells me you've been keeping a record? Jasmine nodded, thinking of the notebook now filled with dates, incidents, screenshots, and witness names. Good, Dr. Powell said. Bring that to my office Monday morning. Meanwhile, I'm going to have a serious conversation with the tech crew about checking the projection equipment before performances. As Dr. Powell left, Jasmine turned to Mr. Washington. Do you really think anything will change? He handed her a tissue. I don't know, but I do know this. You stood your ground tonight when most people would have run. That took more courage than those girls will ever understand. Jasmine dabbed at her eyes. For the first time in weeks, something other than sadness or fear burned in her chest. Something stronger, something that felt like power. They think this was the end, she said quietly. But they're wrong. This was just the beginning. Monday morning came too quickly. Jasmine barely slept all weekend, replaying the talent show disaster in her mind. Her phone had blown up with notifications, some supportive messages from strangers who'd attended the show, but mostly screenshots of the video Alexis had posted online of Jasmine's humiliation. She'd finally turned her phone off completely. Now she stood outside Dr. Powell's office, clutching her notebook so tightly her knuckles turned white. The secretary nodded for her to go in. Good morning, Jasmine, Dr. Powell said, rising from behind a large desk. Please have a seat. Jasmine sat down carefully, placing her notebook on her lap. I brought everything, like you asked. Before we get to that, Dr. Powell said, I want you to know something. What happened Friday night crossed a line that shouldn't exist in any school. I've already spoken with Principal Chen and he agrees completely. Jasmine nodded silently, afraid to hope too much. Now, Dr. Powell continued, tell me everything, from the beginning. For the next hour, Jasmine walked through her documented history at Westlake. The accidental bumps in the hallway, the ruined textbooks, the social media harassment, the comments about diversity quotas when she earned her spot in the academic competition. With each incident, she provided dates, detailed descriptions, and names of witnesses. Dr. Powell took notes, her expression growing more serious. This is extraordinarily thorough, Jasmine, she said finally. Most students wouldn't think to document things this way. Mr. Washington suggested it, Jasmine admitted. He said if I wanted things to change, I needed evidence. He was absolutely right. Dr. Powell tapped her pen against the desk. We found out who tampered with the projection system Friday night. A student named Tyler confessed after we checked the security cameras. He admitted Alexis and her friends put him up to it. Jasmine's heart raced. What happens now? That depends partly on you, Dr. Powell said. The school has a responsibility to address this harassment, but I'd like your input on how we proceed. Jasmine blinked in surprise. No adult had asked for her opinion yet. I don't want revenge, she said slowly. I just want it to stop, and I don't want this to happen to anyone else. Dr. Powell nodded. That's very mature. Here's what I propose. The girls will face suspension, and they'll be required to complete an anti-bullying program before returning. But I also think there's a bigger issue here. The school culture that allowed this to happen. Everyone saw what was happening, Jasmine agreed quietly. But nobody did anything. Exactly. So I'd like to implement a school-wide program addressing bullying and racism, and I'd like you to help design it. Jasmine sat up straighter. Me? Why? Because you've lived it, Dr. Powell said simply. And because you've handled this situation with remarkable grace and intelligence. Your perspective would be invaluable. For the first time in months, Jasmine felt something like pride warm her chest. I'd like that. That afternoon, Jasmine sat in the library during her free period, researching anti-bullying programs at other schools. Her focus was so intense, she didn't notice someone approach until they cleared their throat. Looking up, she was startled to see Alexis standing across the table, alone. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by an uncomfortable shifting from foot to foot. "Can I talk to you?" Alexis asked, her voice unusually quiet. Jasmine tensed. "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," Alexis said, "just for a minute." After a moment, Jasmine nodded toward the empty chair across from her. Alexis sat down, staring at her manicured nails. "I got called to Dr. Powell's office this morning. I'm suspended for 2 weeks." "I know," Jasmine said. She waited, refusing to make this easier. "Look," Alexis finally said, "I know you probably won't believe me, but I didn't mean for things to go so far at the talent show. It was supposed to be a stupid prank, not what it turned into." Jasmine kept her face neutral. "It wasn't just the talent show, though, was it?" Alexis had the decency to look ashamed. "No." "Why?" Jasmine asked, the question that had haunted her for months. "What did I ever do to you?" Alexis sighed. "Nothing. That's the stupid part. It was, you came here, and suddenly teachers were talking about how smart you were and colleges were interested in you, and you didn't even seem to be trying that hard. So you tormented me because I was good at school?" Jasmine couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. "When you say it like that, it sounds really messed up," Alexis admitted. "I guess I was jealous. And then it just escalated." The admission hung in the air between them. Jasmine thought about all the nights she'd cried herself to sleep, all because this girl felt threatened by her success. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," Alexis said finally. "I just wanted you to know that Dr. Powell made it very clear what we did was wrong, and I get it now." Jasmine nodded slowly. "Thank you for saying that." As Alexis stood to leave, Jasmine added, "By the way, I'm helping design the new anti-bullying program. Maybe when you finish your suspension, you could contribute too. Your perspective might be educational." The surprise on Alexis's face was almost worth everything Jasmine had endured. Almost. That evening, as Jasmine told her mother about the day's events, she realized something had fundamentally changed, not just in how the school was handling the situation, but in how she saw herself. "You know what, Mom?" she said. "I think I actually won." Her mom smiled proudly. "You didn't just win, baby. You changed the game." The next few weeks brought dramatic changes to Jasmine's life at Westlake High. With Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa serving their 2-week suspensions, the hallways felt lighter somehow. For the first time since arriving, Jasmine could walk to class without constantly looking over her shoulder. Mr. Washington introduced her to the school's Black Student Union, a small but tight-knit group that met weekly to discuss everything, from college applications to cultural events. There, Jasmine found what she'd been missing most, a sense of belonging. "We heard about what happened at the talent show," said Dion, the group's president, during her first meeting. "That took guts. Staying on stage like that. I almost ran," Jasmine admitted. "Part of me wanted to." "But you didn't," said Tiana, a quiet senior with bright eyes. "That's what matters." They welcomed her without question, offering friendship, advice, and most importantly, understanding. When Jasmine described the subtle microaggressions she'd experienced, no one asked if she was being too sensitive. Instead, they nodded in recognition of shared experiences. Meanwhile, Dr. Powell stayed true to her word. She organized a committee to develop new anti-bullying initiatives, with Jasmine as a key student member. The superintendent also arranged for Jasmine to meet weekly with Ms. Carter, a counselor from the district office who specialized in helping students cope with racial trauma. "How are you sleeping?" Ms. Carter asked during their first session. "Better," Jasmine said. "Not great, but better." "That's normal. Healing takes time." Ms. Carter leaned forward. "Tell me something that made you happy this week." Jasmine thought about it. The academic decathlon is in 3 weeks. I've been studying with Mr. Washington after school. That's wonderful. Are you nervous? Less about the competition and more about facing everyone after, you know. Ms. Carter nodded. That makes sense. Let's talk about some strategies for handling those situations. The sessions helped more than Jasmine expected. She learned breathing techniques for anxiety, ways to set boundaries, and most importantly, how to recognize her own strength. You've been carrying a heavy load, Ms. Carter told her. But look at what you've accomplished already. You stood up for yourself when adults who should have protected you failed. You documented everything when most teenagers would have just suffered in silence. You're already showing leadership that many adults never develop. Those words stayed with Jasmine, fueling her preparation for the upcoming competition. Each evening, she reviewed flashcards on history, literature, and science until her eyes grew tired. During lunch periods, she practiced math problems while eating. After school, Mr. Washington quizzed her on everything from art history to economics. You're more than ready, he assured her the day before the competition. Just remember to pace yourself tomorrow. That night, Jasmine could barely sleep. Not from fear this time, but from anticipation. The academic decathlon represented everything she'd been fighting for, the chance to be judged on her abilities alone. Morning arrived with unexpected news. Principal Chen called Jasmine to his office, where she found Dr. Powell waiting alongside a woman she didn't recognize. Jasmine, this is Ms. Rodriguez from the Regional Education Board, Principal Chen explained. She oversees the academic decathlon. Ms. Rodriguez extended her hand. I wanted to meet you in person before today's event. We've made some changes to the competition format this year. Jasmine's stomach dropped. Changes? What kind of changes? Nothing that affects the content, Ms. Rodriguez assured her. But after hearing about your experience from Dr. Powell, we realized our event wasn't as inclusive as it should be. So we've added a panel discussion on diversity in education, and we'd like you to participate after the main competition. Jasmine blinked in surprise. Me? But I'm just a competitor. You're more than that, Ms. Rodriguez said. Your story has already inspired changes in this district. Other students could benefit from hearing it. As Jasmine walked to her first class, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride in being asked to speak, nervousness about the competition itself, and underneath it all, a new feeling she was still getting used to. Confidence. During lunch, she sat with her new friends from the Black Student Union, going over last-minute competition tips. Halfway through the period, a familiar figure approached their table. It was Zoe, alone, looking uncomfortable. The group fell silent. Can I talk to you? She asked Jasmine. Dion started to protest, but Jasmine held up her hand. It's okay. She stood up and walked a few steps away with Zoe. I heard you're speaking at the panel today, Zoe said. Jasmine nodded, wondering how news had traveled so fast. I just wanted to say. Zoe took a deep breath. I'm sorry for everything. Not because I got caught, but because what we did was wrong. That's all. Before Jasmine could respond, Zoe walked away. Tiana raised an eyebrow when Jasmine returned to the table. What was that about? Jasmine shrugged. I think she might actually be learning something. As the final bell rang, signaling the end of classes and the beginning of her journey to the competition venue, Jasmine felt strangely calm. Whatever happened today, win or lose, she had already overcome the greatest challenge, finding her voice in a place that had tried to silence her, and no one could take that victory away from her. The regional academic decathlon was held at Riverside Community College, a sprawling campus with modern buildings and carefully manicured lawns. As the Westlake High bus pulled into the parking lot, Jasmine's stomach tightened with nerves. 20 schools would be competing today, each sending their best and brightest students. Remember, just focus on one question at a time, Mr. Washington advised as they walked toward the main building. You've prepared for this. The competition area buzzed with activity. Students in matching team shirts huddled in corners, quizzing each other on last-minute facts. Parents and teachers chatted nervously in the stands. At the registration table, Jasmine received her name badge and competition schedule. The written exams are first, the volunteer explained. Then lunch, followed by the speed round, and finally, the super quiz in the auditorium. Jasmine nodded, scanning the room for familiar faces. Her heart skipped when she spotted Alexis's father, a tall man in an expensive suit who served on the school board. What was he doing here? No time to worry about that now. The proctor was calling students to their assigned seats for the first exam. For the next 3 hours, Jasmine moved through a grueling series of tests. Literature, with passages to analyze. Mathematics, with complex problems to solve. Science. History. Economics. Each subject blending into the next. Her hand cramped from writing, but she pushed through, drawing on all her preparation. During the lunch break, Mr. Washington found her in the cafeteria. "How do you think you did?" he asked. "Good, I think," Jasmine said, massaging her writing hand. "The literature questions were exactly what we practiced." "Excellent." He hesitated, then added, "I should warn you, there are some people from Westlake in the audience, board members, a few students." Jasmine felt her appetite vanish. "Which students?" "I saw Vanessa with her mother, and Alexis's father is here as a board representative. Of course they would show up today of all days." Jasmine tried to focus on her sandwich, but each bite tasted like cardboard. "The panel discussion is right after the final round," Mr. Washington continued. "Ms. Rodriguez said they'll announce the competition winners first, then transition to the panel." Jasmine nodded, her mind racing. What would she say with those people watching? Should she tone down her experiences to avoid making the school look bad? No. She'd spent too long trying to make others comfortable at the expense of her own truth. The afternoon events passed in a blur. The speed round pitted students against each other in a rapid-fire quiz format. Jasmine held her own, advancing to the final round against a boy from Oak Ridge Prep who seemed to know every scientific formula by heart. The super quiz was the most public part of the competition, held in the main auditorium with a live audience. Teams sat together on stage, answering questions displayed on a large screen. Points flashed on a scoreboard as each correct answer registered. Despite her earlier nerves, Jasmine found her rhythm. When a particularly difficult question about constitutional law appeared, she was the only competitor to answer correctly, earning gasps from the audience and a slight lead for Westlake. As the final scores were calculated, Jasmine caught sight of Vanessa in the audience, whispering to her mother. The familiar anxiety began creeping back. What were they saying about her? "And now," the announcer's voice boomed, "the results of this year's regional academic decathlon." The gymnasium fell silent. In third place, Lincoln Academy. Applause as the Lincoln team stood to receive their bronze medals. In second place, Oak Ridge Preparatory. More applause. The boy who challenged Jasmine shrugged good-naturedly as he accepted his silver medal. And the winner of this year's regional academic decathlon, advancing to the state championship. Westlake High School, led by Jasmine Williams with the highest individual score in competition history. The Westlake section erupted in cheers. Mr. Washington pulled Jasmine into a brief hug before she walked forward to accept the trophy. Her hands trembled as the gold medal was placed around her neck. Looking out at the audience, she saw mixed reactions. Most people were applauding politely. The Westlake teachers were beaming with pride. But Vanessa and her mother sat with tight smiles, clapping without enthusiasm. Alexis's father looked downright uncomfortable. "Congratulations to all our competitors," the announcer continued. "And now, please welcome Ms. Rodriguez for a special panel discussion on diversity in academic competition." Jasmine took her assigned seat on the panel alongside educators and administrators from various schools. Ms. Rodriguez began by introducing the topic, the barriers that prevent some students from participating in academic competitions, and strategies for creating more inclusive environments. When it was Jasmine's turn to speak, she took a deep breath and looked directly at the audience. "6 months ago, I transferred to Westlake High," she began. "I was excited about the academic opportunities, but I quickly learned that being smart wasn't enough. Being different made me a target. She described the bullying without naming names, explained how it escalated, and shared how it had affected her mentally and emotionally. The hardest part wasn't the obvious harassment, she admitted. It was when teachers and administrators saw what was happening, but dismissed it as normal teenage drama. It was being told to try harder to fit in instead of expecting others to treat me with basic respect. From the corner of her eye, she saw Alexis's father shift uncomfortably in his seat. But today isn't about placing blame, Jasmine continued. It's about moving forward. At Westlake, we're now implementing new policies and programs to address bullying and create a more inclusive environment. And I'm proud to be part of that change. As she spoke, Jasmine noticed something unexpected. Vanessa was actually listening, her previous smirk replaced by a thoughtful expression. Talent and intelligence come in all forms, Jasmine concluded. But they can only flourish in environments where everyone feels safe and valued. That's not just about being nice. It's about creating spaces where true competition can exist on equal terms. The applause that followed was genuine and prolonged. As Jasmine returned to her seat, Ms. Rodriguez leaned over. That was powerful, she whispered. You've got quite a future ahead of you. After the event, as people mingled in the reception area, Jasmine found herself face to face with Alexis's father. Congratulations on your win, he said stiffly. You represented Westlake well. Thank you, Jasmine replied, meeting his gaze directly. He hesitated. I want you to know that the board is taking the situation at school very seriously. What my daughter and her friends did was unacceptable. Jasmine nodded, surprised by his candor. Your speech today, he continued, made me realize we've been addressing symptoms rather than causes. I'd like to hear more about your ideas for the anti-bullying initiative if you're willing to present at our next board meeting. As he walked away, Mr. Washington appeared at Jasmine's side, holding the gleaming trophy. What did he want? He asked. Jasmine smiled. I think he just learned something. The weeks following the academic decathlon transformed Westlake High. Jasmine's victory made headlines in the local newspaper, with a photo of her holding the trophy alongside Mr. Washington. The article praised her academic excellence and briefly mentioned the new anti-bullying initiative she was helping to develop. Back at school, Jasmine noticed a shift in how people treated her. Students who had previously ignored her now smiled in the hallways or congratulated her on the win. Teachers who once overlooked the bullying now pointed to her as an example of perseverance. It felt strange, almost like becoming a minor celebrity, overnight. The most dramatic change, however, came from the administration. Principal Chen invited Jasmine to weekly meetings to discuss school climate issues. The guidance counselor who had dismissed her concerns was now required to attend special training on recognizing racial harassment. We're implementing a zero-tolerance policy for bullying, Principal Chen explained during one meeting, and we're adding diversity training for all staff before the next school year. That's great, Jasmine said. But what about right now? Most students still don't understand why what happened was so harmful. Principal Chen leaned forward. What would you suggest? An assembly, Jasmine said without hesitation. But not the usual kind where adults lecture students who aren't listening. Something different. That conversation led to Westlake's first ever Unity Day, a full-day event replacing regular classes. The morning featured student-led workshops on cultural awareness, while the afternoon offered panel discussions on creating a respectful school environment. Jasmine stood at the entrance to the auditorium, watching students file in for the main assembly. Her heart pounded as she reviewed her notes one last time. Public speaking had never been her strength, yet here she was, about to address the entire school. Nervous? Mr. Washington appeared beside her. Terrified, she admitted. What, if they don't listen? They will, he assured her. After everything that's happened, they know this matters. From the side entrance, Jasmine spotted Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa entering together. Their suspension had ended last week, and part of their disciplinary agreement included participating in today's event. They looked uncomfortable as they found seats near the back. Principal Chen stepped to the microphone, welcoming everyone and explaining the day's purpose. And now, he concluded, please welcome Jasmine Williams, who will share her perspective on building a better school community. The applause felt deafening as Jasmine approached the stage. Looking out at hundreds of faces, some curious, some bored, some genuinely interested, she took a deep breath. Most of you know who I am by now, she began. I'm the transfer student who won the academic decathlon. I'm also the girl who was bullied so severely that the superintendent had to get involved. A hushed silence fell over the room. I could stand here and tell you every horrible thing that was done to me, she continued. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because what happened to me happens to students every day in schools across the country. The difference is, most of them suffer in silence. She explained how isolating it feels to be targeted, how the damage isn't just from the bullies but from bystanders who see it happening and do nothing. Each of you has power, she said, her voice growing stronger. The power to speak up when you see someone being mistreated. The power to reach out to someone who's alone. The power to say, that's not okay when friends make harmful jokes. As she spoke, Jasmine noticed Alexis watching intently from the back row. I don't want revenge against the people who hurt me, Jasmine continued. What I want is change. Real change that starts with each of us in this room. She invited several other students to join her on stage, members of different clubs and teams who shared brief stories about feeling excluded or misunderstood. Each person offered one concrete suggestion for creating a more inclusive environment. When the assembly ended, students broke into smaller discussion groups led by teachers and trained peer facilitators. Jasmine moved between rooms, listening to conversations that would have seemed impossible just months earlier. Near the end of the day, as students prepared to leave, Jasmine found herself alone in an empty classroom, taking a moment to decompress. The door opened and she looked up to see Alexis, Zoe, and Vanessa standing awkwardly in the doorway. Can we talk to you? Alexis asked. Jasmine hesitated, then nodded. The three girls entered, keeping some distance between them. Your speech was really good, Vanessa said quietly. Thanks, Jasmine replied, uncertain where this was going. Alexis stepped forward. We wanted to apologize for real this time, not because we were forced to. The things we did, Zoe added. We can't take them back, but we've been talking a lot during our suspension, and we realized how messed up it all was. Jasmine studied their faces, looking for signs of insincerity. Instead, she saw what looked like genuine remorse. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because of what you said today, Alexis explained, about wanting change instead of revenge. We thought maybe we could help with some of the initiatives you're working on. Jasmine couldn't help but laugh. You want to work on anti-bullying programs? We know how it sounds, Vanessa admitted, but who better to explain why people bully than people who did it? It was such an unexpected offer that Jasmine wasn't sure how to respond. Part of her wanted nothing to do with them. Another part recognized the potential value in their perspective. I'll think about it, she said finally. That's the best I can offer right now. They nodded, accepting this limited opening. As the three girls left, Mr. Washington entered carrying a small package. How are you holding up? He asked. Tired, Jasmine admitted. But good tired, you know? He smiled, handing her the package. This came for you today. Inside, Jasmine found a letter from the State Department of Education, inviting her to join a student advisory board on school climate issues. They had heard about her work at Westlake and wanted her perspective on statewide policies. They want me to represent our district, she whispered, reading the letter twice to make sure she understood. Of course they do, Mr. Washington said. You've turned a painful experience into positive change. That's rare, especially in someone so young. Walking home that evening, Jasmine reflected on how much had changed in just a few months. She had arrived at Westlake feeling invisible, then became a target, and now had somehow become a voice for change. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still difficult days, the occasional nightmare, moments of anger when she remembered how long she had suffered before anyone took action. But there was also pride in what she had accomplished, connection with new friends who understood her experiences, and a growing confidence that would carry her forward no matter what challenges came next. The bullies had tried to break her. Instead, they had helped forge something stronger. A young woman who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to stand up, not just for herself but for others who couldn't yet find their voice. That, Jasmine decided, was the most brutal lesson of all.